Now, once we start applying these ideas to healthcare, we find that it's only just beginning, this idea of decentralization. There was a time, as Kevin mentioned in his comments, that a lot of people, a lot of doctors would pay house calls. And if we needed to analyze specimens, we would probably be staining those samples and looking at them under our own microscopes in our own offices. But over the course of decades, all these services centralized. There was almost a gravitational pull into this big business model known as the general hospital. And the question is, what's been going on to decentralize that? Well, in some ways, it's happened in some specialties with some technologies. Some of that care has moved out into the world of outpatient clinics, but we want to continue to push that so that we can start to do in doctors' offices what we now do in outpatient clinics. And likewise, we want to continue pushing outward into patients' homes. And as we change the venue of care delivery, we can also start changing the profession. Enabled by technology, we can start not just to rely on physicians, but we can start to push those capabilities to nurses and physician assistants, technicians, and ultimately patients themselves. Again, armed with technology, we can create these disruptive changes where we enable non-experts or people with less skill to do more and more things for themselves. And that's really the only way we can make healthcare more accessible and more affordable for more people. Expecting general hospitals to somehow become cheap by cutting reimbursements and payments is a pipe dream. It would be sort of like expecting mainframe computers to suddenly become cheap and so that everybody could all of a sudden have a mainframe in their own house. It's equally absurd. And just a quick story about how we often approach this implementation of technology in healthcare and why technology has not had the same effects in healthcare as it has had in other industries. If you just look at how the electronics market tried to adapt to the advent of transistors. So it used to be that major electronics were made with vacuum tubes, things like tabletop radios, floor-standing televisions, they're all made with vacuum tubes. And when solid-state electronics became possible, companies like GE, Zenith, Westinghouse, they all saw the potential in this technology, and they all licensed that to try to figure out how they could build a radio or a television set out of a transistor. And they spent billions in today's dollars trying to figure out how to do that. The problem was, the path that they took was to take a new technology that was potentially disruptive, but they crammed it right back into their existing business model, where they were trying to build the high-quality television sets and radio sets for their existing customers. That was the only way that they could see themselves staying in business. Now, where did transistors ultimately show up? Well, it started in one of these rings of customers that were completely ignored by the vacuum tube business. And those were in hearing aids. And they were ignored because you can't make a hearing aid out of a vacuum tube. So here was this perfect outer ring of customers who had nothing else at all. And so they, no matter how crummy of a product you delivered them, they would have taken it because it was better than the alternative. And then, of course, from there it started to improve. And then companies like Sony and Panasonic came out with the first solid-state pocket radios based on transistors. And again, these first radios were not that great. They were tinny. You had to keep them pointed in the same direction in the sky in order to get any kind of reception. But they were great for one of these ignored populations. In this case, it was the form of teenagers. And teenagers loved having these radio sets because they couldn't afford the tabletop radios that their parents owned. And so, given that their alternative was to have no radio at all, they were very willing adopters of these pocket radios. And then again, transistor-based technologies continue to improve, and then you get portable televisions. And again, these first televisions could not compete against the floor-standing televisions, but they were perfect products for people who didn't have big enough wallets or big enough apartments to own one of the floor-standing models. And so as Sony and Panasonic continued up their own disruptive path, companies like GE, Zenith, Westinghouse were in big, big trouble. Now, in talking about what disruption means to healthcare delivery and what it means to the healthcare model, what we found was we've been asking for decades our healthcare model to do several things. And in other businesses, in other industries, we would normally expect unique businesses to be set up under each of these wings. So basically, there are three elements that we've sort of mixed together in the hospital business model. And these are the three business models that you can really separate the entire world into. The first type is called a solution shop. A solution shop is where you bring together smart people, all the cash and resources that they might need to solve unstructured trial and error problems. And so a company like IDEO on the left, which is a design and innovation consulting firm, you're going to get a whole team of experts to solve a consulting problem. And they might bring together not just a designer, but a cultural anthropologist, a psychologist, a marketing expert. Whatever expert you might need, they'll assemble them in a team to help figure out that problem. But the problem has no fixed process to get to your solution. And so you pay them on a fee-for-service basis. So things like marketing, R&D, these are all things where we have to pay on a fee-for-service basis. And in fact, this is where healthcare has its roots. The reason we still pay fee-for-service for a lot of things is because we don't have a fixed process to get you the answer. The whole intuitive nature of healthcare delivery is based on this idea. However, the second type of business that exists is the value-adding process business. And this is something that is only emerging in healthcare because of new technologies, but we haven't done a great job in terms of segregating it out into a different type of delivery model. So this is what I like to describe as the 10 items or less line, or the Jiffy Lube of businesses. So once you have something that is a fixed process, where you have goods that are unfinished and you can do stuff to it and ship it out in a higher value form, you can create a value-adding process business. So things like manufacturing, where you bring in steel, you do stuff to it, and you can ship a car out the other end. Or in food services, where you bring in raw ingredients, you do stuff to it, and you can ship prepared meals out. What that means for healthcare is that there are certain procedures where the diagnosis has already been made, and all you need to do is a series of steps to get the patient fixed and out the door. That is an opportunity that is ripe for a very different business model. And the fact that we continue to send them to the hospital that has its expertise rooted in the solution shop model makes it a very expensive proposal to take care of those problems in that setting. And then finally, I think where there's a lot of excitement, I'm sure in this room, is the third type of business model called the facilitated user network. The user network comprises actually 40% of the global economy, but in healthcare, it's tremendously underutilized. What a user network is, at least in the definition we've given in the book, is a business that tries to connect users so that they can share information or items of value with one another. Now, the reason it's such a big part of the global economy is, if you think about it, well, telecommunications is very much a user network because we all send data to each other in the network. In banking, where we all pool money collectively and we take loans out of it when we need to. Insurance, we pool our premiums together when we take claims out when we need to. These are all networks, and the companies that help facilitate these transactions are essentially the ones that are making any money. And so Facebook, of course, is a great modern example of this. And the question is, how can we use this underutilized business model in healthcare to make care, again, more effective, more affordable, and conveniently accessible to more people? And we felt that it had strong implications for chronic disease because user networks are available at very low cost, usually free, 24 hours a day. And again, relying on the solution shop model or the traditional mixed model of the hospital to somehow deliver preventive care or chronic disease care is a very expensive proposal. And it's just not a business model that is well suited for delivering that type of care. And so as we talk about technologies over the next 2 days, I want you to think about what type of business model are we really plugging that technology into? Because if you're sending it right back into the general hospital that tries to be all things to all people, that technology is never going to get off the ground. Hospitals struggle to do anything well because they're trying to serve so many different purposes. And it's only by segregating them and disrupting the general hospital business model can we ever really get to a system that I think can deliver affordable care to everyone. Thank you.